Good evening, everyone. Thank you so very much for joining us here tonight. Hello to all who are watching on YouTube as well. Thank you for joining us there. You'll notice there is a live chat, so you can join in the celebrations yourself. We are broadcasting and hosting this event live in Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, in the homeland of the Métis Nation. In addition, McNally Robinson Booksellers itself rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community of Roostertown. My name is John Taves, which is appropriate, although I am not the humorous Mennonite you'll be hearing from tonight. I am the officious Mennonite who will be telling you some housekeeping notes. So thank you so much for your tolerance in advance. Rest assured I will not take up too much of your time, as there are much more interesting people you will be hearing from tonight. I'd just like to go over a few very brief housekeeping rules or suggestions as well. Within the space, we just ask that all you folks in the audience just keep your masks on while you're within this space. Once you move along to the signing and the mingling thereafter, mask use will just be strongly recommended. We just ask that you humor us within these gray walls. In addition to that, there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions later on during the evening. Just to keep things flowing along and make sure everything is audible to the good folks watching at home, we'll just ask that you keep your questions relatively short and to the point, and that you tell them to me, at which point I will attempt to do justice to your eloquence by repeating it into the microphone I'm holding here. Just seemed a wiser idea than spreading a microphone among every single person in the room. That also ensures that everybody at home can hear us nice and clearly. With that in mind, rest assured you will have ample time to talk to tonight's participants after the event. So if you have any pleasant comments you might like to make, feel free to visit them at the signing table afterward, and you'll be able to pass along much more detailed notes. Beyond that, thank you so very much for joining us. I was just mentioning to everybody, this is the largest crowd we've had here in the space since we've started doing live events again. So we couldn't be more pleased to have you all here. And given that I, at Taves, am hosting, Rempel designed our poster, and a Friesen designed our book display for the evening, we are fully Mennonite this evening. So I'd like to send special thanks to the Winnipeg International Writers Festival for helping to put this event together, and of course to Turnstone Press for not only putting this event together, but also for publishing all the books we're here to talk about. But that is more than enough for me, so I now have the incredible pleasure of introducing your host for the evening. Corny Rempel has been the voice of the Mix Morning Show on Mix 96.7 FM in Steinbach for over 15 years. He is also the world's only Mennonite Elvis. As a multiple award-winning Elvis Tribute Artist, Corny has performed all across North America. In 2017, he was in the top 20 Elvis performers in the world, battling it out for the top spot in the Ultimate Elvis Tribute Competition at Graceland in Memphis, Tennessee. Corny also performs as the Man in Black, Johnny Cash. He voices cartoons and video games on the side, and yes, Corny is his real name. Please join me in welcoming Corny Rempel.
Good evening. Yes, what a voice, first of all. Let's hear it for John Taves. Wow. Let's send a snippet into Golden West Radio. That's pretty sweet. Yes, Corny Rempel is my real name. And whenever I am somewhere where there's a lot of Mennonites, I tell them my name is Corny. Nobody bats an eye, right? Because everyone has a Corny in their family. Raise your hand if there's a Corny in your family. See, look at this. And if they call themselves Neil, they're not fooling anybody, right? They're not fooling. We know who you are. But Corny is my real name. For those that don't know, it's short for Cornelius. And my grandfather was Cornelius Rempel, and my father was Cornelius Rempel. I am Cornelius Rempel. Makes me Cornelius Rempel III. Sort of snooty, don't you think? So I stuck with Corny. And, you know, going to school, I thought that the name Corny was as bad as it could get. Found out very quickly there's two words in the English language that rhyme with corny. You want to guess the other one? No. Well, nobody ever called me Thorny. Okay, so we're going to leave it right there. John was excited and surprised that this was the biggest audience that we've had for a reading since they started doing this again. I am not surprised at all, because I heard somebody walking in saying, why would I buy that book when I can just hear him read the whole thing? Surprise, guys, they're only reading part of it. You still gotta buy the book. You don't leave. But we're gonna have some fun here today. All right, on to our guests tonight, Armin Wiebe and Andrew Unger. Now, Armin Wiebe is an author of 4 novels and 3 plays in the mystical world of Gutenthal, named after his father, who was Gutenthal. You're welcome. In addition to a collection of short stories, a well-loved writer, teacher, and mentor, Armin's work has won the McNally Robinson Book of the Year Award and the Margaret Laurence Award for Fiction, and has been nominated for the Stephen Leacock Memorial Medal of Humour. Well done. That's awesome. Let's hear it for Armin. And Andrew Unger is the author of the satirical website, The Daily Bonnet, which has often been mistaken for news. And the award-winning novel, Once Removed. An educator based in southern Manitoba. His work has appeared in G's, Rhubarb, Ballast, CBC.ca, the Winnipeg Free Press, and many others, and many appearances on the Mixed Morning Show, I might add. We've had a lot of fun. And if you go back far enough, he's probably related to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, Armin Wiebe, Andrew Unger. We starting with Armin? I think Armin's here. All right, Armin is going to read a bit of his book. Armin Wiebe, all yours.
Well, if my grandfathers had had their way, I might have been called Corny Abe, but I always was embarrassed by the name Armin because there was nobody else around with that name as I was growing up, but I'm grateful for it now because there is still no other Armin Wiebe. So I won't read from my Bonnet romance novel today, but I just thought I'd show it to you in case you can't find it on your church library shelf, so then you can buy one here tonight. But I decided to start with a clean book, and that's why there's laundry on the cover. Now, I like working with voices, and much of my writing has been in first-person voices, and this is the only story I've written that is in Ota's first-person voice. So I will share a bit with that with you. You see, I don't very often go to Winnipeg alone with the car, and I almost bebazzled myself in the Change House district trying to find a parking place where I wouldn't have to pay or get the car stolen by a happy hooker tow truck for parking just 4 hours on a 2-hour street. Still, I found a place close beside the river, behind some old brick buildings and a whole fence full of hydro stuff. It's not so far to Eaton's, I figured, as I locked the car and started to walk to Main Street. It was quite a shantly hot day, and I was glad I wasn't on a beet field. Though lots of women like to be in the hot sun so they can get burned in dark and brown. City women, especially those who only need enough skin to cover their bones, want to be almost naked in the sun. And as I was turning the corner where I could see the walking place between the Centennial Hall and the Museum of Man and Nature Study, I passed these 2 women leaning against the hydro pole, tanning themselves. All they had on, it looked like, were hip-waiter high heels and some long leather fringes where the bathing suits should have been. I could feel their eyes glotzing at me from behind their sunglasses as I walked past. And for a second, I wondered myself what it would feel like to show my skin through such fringes. And I wondered too, if maybe I should have put on those open-toe, high-heeled shoes I bought from Frühlied Fashions one time when my head wasn't on quite straight. But by the time I had walked past Queen Elizabeth there between the Centennial Hall and the Museum of Man and Nature Study, I was happy I had on my Princess Reeboks, runners from Ha Thiessen store. By this time too, I had figured out that those two women must have something to do with the Fringes Festival. Because lots of Fringes Festival posters were plastered on poles and even on a city bus that was stopped by the Sue Thompson City Hall. Then it wasn't far till the Fringes Festival gate, and that's where I first saw him. Well, I didn't just see him. He stepped in front of me and held out a piece of paper like a gospel tract. And for a second, I thought he was Help All Heinrichs volunteering for the Union Gospel Mission. But after I took the paper from his hand and looked at it, I could see for sure that this wasn't a gospel tract. And I'll stop there. Now, another voice that figures in my writing is the voice of Caudle Kaler, the teacher's son. Anyway, he's at the Gutenthal curling rink fowl supper or borscht supper in the fall. Well, my head was spinning itself drowl with dandelions and sow thistles in my milk of human kindness. And because I was in grade 11, I could say out, damn spot. Though later I would be saying tomorrow and over tomorrow and over tomorrow and out, brief candle. But right then, when Foikel Folk was bragging about getting Pinklich Penner into his cab to go to the drive-in show in Cavalier, I had my own brief candle when it fell through my head as I was lighting another cigarette, that if it was okay for Pinklich to go out with her first cousin, Foikel Funk, then for sure it would be okay if she went out with her second cousin, me, Caudle Kaler. Of course, what Pinklich might want didn't really have a place in my dream picture of myself driving along in the old man's car, or maybe a white 64 Thunderbird convertible like they had in the National Geographic ads, driving along in the moonlight with my arm around Pinklich Penner. When I think about it now, it was some kind of tale told by an idiot for sure. But on the night of the borscht supper at the Gutenthal curling rink, it was Neidig Niefeld who fushelled the word around to the young people that his parents were gone to Saskatchewan and that he was having a dance in their brand new barn after the borscht supper was over. Now you have to understand that Neidig fushelled the word about the dance, and that is probably why the story got so big afterwards. Because when some brief candle is sort of hidden under a bushel, the little flame that gives off a much brighter light than if it had just been allowed to flicker in the open air. Now I could maybe give you a long historical sermon about flat Germans and dancing, and could even tell you some standing up jokes to go along with Bible belts and referendums about whiskey and beer parlors, or waiting till the car is halfway to Winnipeg before the lipstick is smeared on from Steinbach. Only what's the use of something like that? The long and the short of it was that at that particular time, what would have been a tiny two-step in the Mary's Creek Hall was a giant leap in Haustig Niefeld's new barn in Gutenthal. or maybe a big bang if I try to keep the whole thing in my head at the same time. So that's Corny Also. And then I want to share a bit of Sush's voice. And Sush is 90 in the care home, and she's telling her life story to her grandson. He's taping it. So Preacher Funk had gone in to see Teen's grandmother, and Teen led me into Yaltosh Yitz's machine shop. I still held the rhubarb pie in my hand. In the light from the windows, I saw Obram before I saw Teen's brother, Tony, and Yaltosh Yitz's daughter, Hilda. I saw him before I saw the lawn swing with the two benches, half painted red and white. He was wearing bib overalls and no shirt, and he was bent over and twisted backwards, painting the underside of a board blood red. His tongue stuck out from his lips like bologna between pieces of bread. And his eyes followed the paint flowing out of the brush, almost like he was squeezing tears out of sore eyes. That's when I felt the chill air at the cross of my back. I wanted to run out of that machine shop. Then a drop of red paint leaked onto the tip of Obram Kaler's nose. Teen laughed and closed her mouth, her cheeks puffed full with air. I felt a tickle in my blind intestine too, but Obram Kaler kept moving that brush without stopping, even though the drop of paint slowly ran down between his upturned nose hills to the little trough that leads to the lips. My breath stopped while I watched to see if the paint would get to his sticking out tongue before his brush reached the end of the board. I wondered what would frighten me more, his finishing the board first or the red paint seeping onto his tongue. For an eye blink, I saw a bare foot stepping on a glowing ember. Then Obram's brush reached the end of the board and he straightened himself up and wiped the paint from under his nose with the back of his brush hand. And at the same time, he smeared a red streak through his reddish eyebrow across his forehead up into his thick reddish hair. Then my grandmother sat up in her coffin again and laughed. At the same time, Teen's mouth burst open and her whole body shook. That tickling spot beside my blind intestine split into 3 pieces and tickled its way down both legs and round up my belly into my throat. And I was laughing, really laughing. My eyes stretched open wide like rolled up stockings ready for feet to be shoved in. Open wide, spilling over with salt water. I couldn't blink. I just had to look at this freckled, samamolich little man, hardly taller than I was, who was glutzing me through with eyes the color of robin's eggs in a nest, red paint on his nose and mixed in with the fuzz over his lips, the paintbrush still in his raised hand, the bristles leaning against the widow's peak that already then was starting to show on the left side of his face. His eyes made me forget everything except that I was laughing, and I was scared that I was laughing, scared that if I looked away, the laughing would maybe stop. I didn't want the laughing to stop, even when my side began to ache, and I wondered how long my legs would hold me up. My back string shivered. For an eye blink, I thought of my grandmother, and my feet felt hot. Then Obram Kaler's face broke into pieces, and his laugh mixed in with ours like a third voice in a trio in church after 3 and 4 voice singing was allowed. Later, at least, it seemed like a trio to me, or maybe even a quartet or a 5-voiced song, because Tony was there and Hilda too, sitting by an old sewing machine behind the lawn swing. But right then, I heard only my voice laughing with Obram Kaler's voice, his eyes swimming in salt water like pickled robin's eggs. Then out of the corner of my eye, I saw the lawn swing benches moving just enough to make me feel the world was tipping. I stepped sideways and I felt the glass pie plate still in my hand tipping. And Obram Kaler ducked forward to grab the pie before it could fall. His paintbrush smeared sticky red paint across my knuckles. I had to blink my eyes then and squeeze the salt tears down to cool my cheeks, red as scarlet fever. Obram Kaler lifted the tea towel from the pie and reached it to me so I could wipe my eyes. His red fingerprints stayed on the cloth, and far away in my head someplace, I heard my mother complaining about paint stains on the tea towel. At the same time, I saw myself folding it carefully and hiding it in a drawer. In another part of my head, my grandmother sat up in her coffin and laughed. I wiped my eyes, and when I looked at him again, Obram had bent his red nose down to sniff the pie. "Rhubarb pie," he said, and without lifting his nose, he looked at me with those robin's egg eyes. "Bist du een engel, merkje? Are you an angel girl?" "Bist du een engel bangel?" I said. "Are you an angel boy?" Then I almost verschlucked myself. My ears shocked at what I had said, shocked that I had said something at all. Obram Kaler lifted his red nose from the pie, then went down on one knee with the pie held up like a gift. "She is a poet and doesn't know it," he said in such a graveyard voice that the tickle spot beside my blind intestine wriggled through my body again, and I was laughing so hard the salt water spilled out from my eyes. I had to bend my knees to stipa myself against the earth, rocking under my feet. Then, while my knees were still soft, Obram stood back up, and with the pie and paintbrush in one hand, he took my arm with his other hand and he swept me across the ground and led me onto the swing, and he sat me down on the bench that hadn't been painted yet. I couldn't help myself. I was laughing so hard, I felt like that lady in Tante Esther's song on CFAM, who swallowed that spider that wriggled and jiggled and tickled inside her. Thank you.
That's a hard act to follow, but since we're seventh cousins once removed, it should be okay. I think that's true. Someone can look it up on their grandma's website there. Grandma online, you know. You're not supposed to touch these things, right?
No.
Okay. Thanks everyone for coming. I'm going to read a little bit from Once Removed, and also from the Best of the Bonnet. There's a couple sections, actually, you know, there's a lot of sections in, I realize there's a lot of sections in Once Removed that have to do with books. Like, really the story is about sort of a fight between those who want to preserve history in a town and those who want to kind of like destroy everything, and conflicting notions of progress and stuff like that. But I realized when I was preparing for this that there was 2 book launch scenes in this book. And then I figured, no, I won't read one of those. And maybe this is a bad idea. You'll put bad ideas in people's heads, but I'm going to read one where the characters go to a used book sale. So hopefully no one gets any ideas. But I was talking to my friend Jeremy on the right here, and we were trying to think, when did we first discover Armin Wiebe's books? And I think Jeremy says, oh yeah, I bought a used copy of Salvation of Yashinid in 1998, so he still owes you $20. This year, okay, so this used book sale takes place at the the old folks' home, which is called the Golden Slumbers Retirement Manor, which they, in the early days, the manor got in trouble because they figured out that it was named after a Beatles song, but this year, the Golden Slumbers book sale was in the common room rather than the chapel. We weren't sure how to get past the front door, but thankfully the entrance was filled with old men sitting on wooden stools waiting for rides, always eager to let in young people who didn't look like murderers. Visiting your grandmother, one man asked. No, just books, Katie said. What? Books, we're here for the books. He smiled and told us they were also selling some pretty nice toy tractors. A poster on the wall advertised an upcoming screening of The Sound of Music. Hey, look, we should stick around for that, Katie joked. I'll run home for some popcorn. It's a popular movie around here because it promotes the idea of having large families and abandoning Catholicism. We also like Fiddler on the Roof because the one guy sings a lot about tradition. I turned back to the old man sitting there. So where's the book sale? I asked. We're here for the book sale, Katie said a little louder. Then she noticed a handwritten note taped to the door that said, book sale, Buzz 3113. She tried it, someone answered, but there was so much static, we couldn't make out what they were saying. A moment later, there was a loud buzzing noise and the door slowly opened on its own. The buzzing noise lasted far longer than was necessary. I tried to pull the door shut behind me, but it didn't budge. No need to force it, said one of the entranceway men. It'll close all on its own, all in good time there, young. Thanks. I wiped my feet on the carpet. Katie took her shoes right off and placed them in a plastic bag to carry them. They're gonna skip ahead here. As soon as we entered, that is the book sale area, a woman with her hair in curlers handed us each a cardboard box and said it would cost us only $10 to fill it up with Harlequin romances. You can take as many as you want. We took the boxes with us to be polite, even though it was unlikely we'd be hauling away that volume of steamy romance novels. We made our way past the toy tractors and doilies and probably 20 tables of bonnet rippers to where the good books, my kind of books, were. It was disappointingly modest, maybe 3 or 4 tables. They had none of the Taves classics, no Brandts or Jansons or Bergens either, not even any of the Wiebes. It was odd. I mean, I guess it was possible it was just an off year. And then the other, I guess that's sort of inconclusive ending there, but I don't want to disclose what happens there. But so I gave you a shout out there. The other joke, I shouldn't say this, the other thing we were joking about on our drive, the long drive from Steinbach, you know, you come up with these ideas, is like, what if I was gonna get my friend to like buy a Rudy Wiebe book and get you to sign it and see. What would you do? Has anyone ever done that? Anyone ever tried that?
No.
All right, now I'll read a few articles from The Best of the Bonnet, which is a collection of Daily Bonnet articles. I think maybe let's start with this one. Mennonite writer finally sells book to non-relative. History was made last night after literary icon Margaret Laurence became the first Mennonite author ever to sell a book to a non-relative. The feat took place at the launch of her 23rd publication entitled Of Solitude and Flax, Tales from the Bandman Lepp Archives. I was sitting there signing copies for all the Bandmans and Lepps who showed up, when out of the corner of my eye, what did I see? A mysterious woman I didn't recognize at all, said Bandman Lepp. I nearly fell out of my chair. In more than 30 years of book signings, she was the first person I've ever had to ask for a name. The mysterious non-related customer bought 2 copies, saying she was going to give one to a friend who apparently is also not related in any way to Bandman Lepp. I was in tears, said Bandman Lepp. I've won awards. I've received great reviews. I've been on the front page of the MB Herald more times than I can count. But never did I imagine I'd make a sale to someone more distantly related than a great aunt. Of Solitude and Flax has reportedly sold more than 1,000 copies to Bandmans and Lepps, plus the 2 copies purchased by that one woman outside the author's immediate family. So thanks, Ungers, for showing up here. And Wiebes, maybe some Wiebes. Okay. church with 250 members splits into 250 churches.
The title is just enough.
This one, you know, sometimes I send reporters out to, you know, far off places. This one takes place in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, but I think it, you know, applies. After a particularly heated membership meeting this past week, the South Lancaster Mennonite Church has decided to split the entire congregation into more manageable units of one. At first, we decided to just split into two groups, those in favor of buttons on their shirts and those who preferred hooks, explained Daniel B. Miller, former South Lancaster elder and recently appointed pastor of Daniel B. Miller Memorial Church. But then the button users started talking amongst themselves and found they had differences of opinion on baptismal water temperature. Those wanting hot and those wanting cold split into their own groups. So then we had the pro-button, pro-cold, pro-button, anti-cold, anti-button, anti-cold, and anti-button, anti-cold groups. I figured it was settled, but upon further discussion, the groups realized they couldn't agree on whether to sing 5 or 6 hymns each Sunday. And so there was the anti-button, anti-cold pro-5 group, and an anti-button, anti-cold pro-6 group, and an anti-button, anti-cold pro-5 group, and well, you get the idea. The groups just kept getting smaller and smaller. Eventually, we all decided to each form our own churches, but there's some opposition to that idea too. The once thriving South Lancaster Church is now 253 to be precise, individual churches, although the division continues. The whole starting your own church thing has got me studying theology, explained Miller. And now I change church doctrine every day. I don't even agree with myself anymore. Miller says he has excommunicated his past self for differences on clerical celibacy and is concerned that a future version of himself might disagree. Who knows what I might believe this Friday afternoon, explained Miller. I always get a little too liberal when the weekend approaches. Being my own pastor is a lot harder than I thought. You get so much criticism from all sides and it's almost impossible to get everyone to agree. Pastor Daniel is already arranging an ecumenical reconciliation service between his various cells for Sunday morning, although he can't figure out whether they should use real wine or just Welch's grape juice. And okay, I forgot to put a sticky note on this one, so just let me see here. See if I can find it. You can edit this out later, right?
Yeah, we're not live. Don't worry.
Oh, okay. Oh shoot. It's like the folk singer tuning their guitar. Hey, someone. Oh my goodness.
The anticipation's killing me.
I know. Okay. What do we got here?
It's number 300.
It's not that one. Yeah. See, it's kind of like trying to find 606 in the new hymn book.
Yeah.
It's in here.
Oh yeah. Index.
There is a. Okay.
There's an argument for indexes. Right?
Okay, somebody. While I'm reading this other one, can you find the one about the rapture?
Would it be at the end? Check Revelation.
I'm sorry, this is bad. Okay. City of Winkler to abandon the metric system in favor of ice cream pail method. I think it's on the left-hand side of the page. Oh yeah, just look in it's in the first section. Let's look, yeah, something about, yeah, you'll find it. I have faith in you. Okay. City of Winkler to abandon the metric system in favor of ice cream pail method. Beginning this fall, residents of Winkler will be forced to measure everything in the traditional Mennonite manner using the ice cream pail. In a 5-2 vote, Winkler's city council decided to ban the use of the metric system and replace it with well-rinsed plastic pails. Ever since the elder Trudeau introduced it in the 1970s, people have been confused about the metric system. I think the best solution is to go back to the method of measurement that every Mennonite knows best, and that is the ice cream pail, explained City Councillor Albert Sawatsky. It really is the most efficient measurement system known to humankind. Mennonites have traditionally used ice cream pails to quantify everything from blueberries picked in the white shell to the liquid volume of coleslaw and potato salad. We've standardized the measurement with Tanta Ani's ammonia cookies, which were always pretty consistent in size and weight. She could fit 52 cookies in one ice cream pail. So from now on, we'll be measuring everything on a 52-point scale, explains Sawatsky. The hardware store is really looking forward to the change. Local schools are already teaching their children how to figure out their height and weight in ice cream pails, and the municipality is considering measuring distances with this method. According to this new system, Winkler is precisely 39,367 ice cream pails from Morden. Not far enough, I guess, but I actually measured the width of an ice cream pail and did the math on that, so you can check it. It's actually true, that distance, yes. Farmers are already talking about how many hectare pails of flax they've planted, noted Sawatsky. The ice cream pail method is just going to make life a lot easier on everybody. I'll read one more very autobiographical one. This is a fear I had as a young man. It was unfounded, but still, you know, Mennonites have fears that are unfounded sometimes. Most of them probably are. Rapture occurs just before newlyweds have a chance to consummate their marriage. Every chaste young man's biggest fear came true last night, as Eric Dueck and Sarah Barkman were miraculously raptured just a moment before they were able to consummate their marriage. I just knew this would happen, said 21-year-old Eric, who had been eagerly anticipating his wedding night ever since he first heard about this thing called sex from Pastor Dave during premarital counseling. The rapture took place just after the reception in the MB church basement. According to the traditional Anabaptist doctrine, the Bible clearly teaches that in heaven, people will neither marry nor be given in marriage, but instead they'll be like angels. Yeah, and angels don't have sex, said a disappointed Eric from his heavenly perch. It's true that I didn't know much about it, but I would have at least liked to have been given the chance to learn. His new wife, Sarah, however, was not as concerned about the situation as her earthly husband. I have to admit, for me, it was a relief, said Sarah. That was the one thing about marrying Eric that I was a little nervous about, but now I don't have to worry. I'm just glad my floral arrangements turned out the way I planned. Eric says he's glad to be in heaven, but wishes he and Sarah had snuck off to the travel lodge sometime between the ceremony and the reception. Oh, we had like 3 hours and all we were doing is taking photographs, said Eric. We really should have had our priorities straight. Thank you.
Oh, that's so good. So good. You know, I was just from the side just saying, sometimes the title is enough, because sometimes I just read that Daily Bonnet title and I go, here we go. That is awesome. We got some questions that we've prepared here for our authors, and then we'll have some questions from the authors. Okay, this is a question for both of you. We'll start with Armin. Which comes first, the comedy or the story?
Well, my intent is
I
always.
don't think his mic is on.
We turn their mics on. Mine's a little hot.
I think mine is on.
It should be on, huh?
Oh.
Might need a little flap.
Okay. Things never change.
So the comedy or the story, what comes first?
That's the story. And the comedy grows out of the story. Of course, it depends who's telling the story. And most of the time, my narrators have kind of a shife view of the world. So that helps. You know, and it still always laughs me when I hear Winnipeg Jets reports and they're talking about Shifley. No wonder they never win.
Well, you know, you can be telling the most mundane story, and then you call somebody like Naidahibat or whatever it was, and then it's immediately funny because any Mennonite can just relate to that. You know, they can just connect. That's great. What about you, Andrew? Is it the joke? Is it the punchline, and then write a story around it? Is that more conducive to what you do?
You know, with Once Removed, a novel, I mean, you obviously have to have a story. You know, you have to have the whole story kind of figured out, right? So you have to have a narrative that you can write over, you know, 200 pages or whatever. Yeah. But so there, you know, I would say the story is first. But with the Daily Bonnet, it's, I would say, the joke. In fact, well, kind of like what you were saying before, you get the headline, and then once I have the headline, then I can just write the, you know, the article just sort of flows from there. So yeah, with the Daily Bonnet, I would say the joke comes first. Yeah.
All right. So what role does Plotich have in your writing? Now, Armin, you write predominantly in English, but there's a lot of Plotich peppered in there. Like what role does Plotich have in your writing as a whole?
It seems to have stuck there all these years when I started.
That's why we don't touch the mics. We talked about this.
When I started, I was just. When I.
Na, vote. It's going verbazeld.
Oh, I heard something.
Oh, dat toch een beetje.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
When I started, I was just fooling around. I mean, I did start just by fooling around, see what I could do. And nobody else was doing that, you know, and so then it was great fun embarrassing people when they would, you know, a bunch of artsy people like red wine would gather and they'd hear Plotich and they'd be all embarrassed. And even my own family, when I finally wrote a book without any Plotich in it, I got a lot of conversation, whereas there was very little conversation about my other books. But I mean, Plotich is funny, especially where when I grew up, we were still very much 3 languages, you know, English in school, High German in church, and Plotich on the farm. And of course, we would mix all those 3 languages. And on the beet field, you know, that was great fun making all these puns in German and Plotich and English. And then, of course, the nicknames, you know, and so as soon as you start using the nicknames, you know, it gets funny. But was the reality of the world at the time. Everybody in a community had a nickname.
What was yours?
Mine? Well, I was called Army a lot. And,
were you Oma? Like be like poor? They Oma chant.
Yeah.
But having anything to do with an army in the Mennonite time must not have been good.
No.
Well, I mean, statistically, about 50% of the young men went off to war and 50% stayed home. So it wasn't that simple. But anyway, yeah. I mean, later I got more interesting names like Armadillo and the Arminator, which I used for my line of song.
Arminator.
That's a Nicki Minaj song.
Arminator?
Armadillo.
Armadillo, okay.
Sorry, never mind that joke.
But I started off fooling around, and then I found out I could make this language sing. Mm-hmm. And then it became an obsession that has lasted 40 years, which scares me a little. Yep.
Well, it is such a unique language that is funny. There's things you can say in Low German that are funny. You say it in English and it's just not funny, you know? If you say, hey, if you got nothing up later and you want to come over, or just, you know, but in German, it's like, wenn du nicht on hast, En het post, dan komt mijn leven. En van het post niet, dan schuiven het op aan het post. There's some people now just staring at me. It means if you have nothing on and it fits, come over. And if it doesn't fit, we'll shove it up till it fits. It's a colorful language. How about you, Andrew? I mean, your audience, now Armin's audience is probably mostly Mennonites, right? There's some that probably, am I wrong, Armin? You can
Probably not wrong. But
most, I'm saying most.
But to say that non-Mennonites or non-Low German speakers don't get my writing, that's not true.
Right, yeah, I agree with that. Now, Andrew, your book, especially the Daily Bonnet, now that one came from, you know, your posts that you would do, your Schput that you would put online, and then you put it all together in a book. So your audience, there's audiences that have read snippets of your book.
Yeah.
So does Plottage play a big role in that for you?
Yeah, I mean, not like, I mean, some Armin's an influence in that way of just like throwing Low German in there untranslated and just putting it in there and not apologizing for it. Just like, it's just, you know, words you use, right? Now, I don't speak Low German. I'm not fluent. I just know, like, you know, the swear words, you know. But once removed, I included a lot of Low German, untranslated Low German in it, and in the Daily Bonnet also. Although there is a glossary in the back, humorous glossary in the back, to help out, you know, for those who need it. But
yeah. What influence does place have in your writing?
Well, very much. It's the East Reserve. I mean, the West Reserve.
I'm East Reserve.
Yeah, you're East Reserve. You're Yancey.
Oh, wait. We were first.
But,
Did you touch your mic, Armin?
okay, you're back.
I'm pretty sure the pastor
I mean,
said something about it.
growing up between the Red River and the Pembina Hills along the border was I think a very unique world in many ways, because for the most part, unless you went to Gretna sometimes, you didn't run into anybody who wasn't a Mennonite, you know?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think I was in Miss Reimer's class when she asked, what do you call Manitobans? And I was going to say Mennonites. And then, but I waited, fortunately, and then she said Manitobans, you know, but.
You thought you put the Mano in Manitoba.
Yeah.
Is that what you thought? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but, so in that sense, it is a quite unique experience, I think, that there may be other communities in Canada where you have some similarities, but this homogeneous one ethnic group community that was, you know, and then the insularity that comes with that, and there's us and them.
Yeah.
And so and then that always, us and them always gives rise to lots of humor.
Yeah. Plus, where you live determines whether you're going to be corn, forn, and biten, or quota, fora, and bite.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So many times you say something in German, people know you're saying it wrong. Nah, I'm just not from there.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. How about you, Andrew?
Yeah, I think place is really important. I mean, like, not naming any names, but Steinbach has been fictionalized a number of times by a number of writers. You know, so, you know, and West Reserve has been fictionalized, the East Reserve has been fictionalized. And yeah, I think that this place, the place where you live, I teach high school too, and I always try to tell students, like, you don't need to set your stories in some far off place that you've never been just because every movie you see is set in Los Angeles or something. There are stories in the place that you live, and there's unique people and there's unique stories. And if you can't find the stories, then you're not digging enough. Like, there's stories there. So I think place and community and is really important in my work too. And in the afterword to the Daily Bonnet book, I talked about how when I was a kid. And I think this is true, but with memory, sometimes you misremember things. But as far as I know, I think the first time I realized that, what a Mennonite, like that was even a thing, was I think we were in the States sometime as a kid, and I was watching baseball, and I really never watched baseball before on television, and I saw all these names of the team, coming up to bat, and there's all these names that I thought, why do the baseball players have such weird names? Like, where are the rhymers and freezes and weeps and stuff like that? Because I literally thought everybody had those names, and if you didn't, then I thought, like, you have an odd name, even though in reality the rhymers and freezes and weebs are like in the minority,
Yeah.
But so you just get this, like Armin was saying, this sense of like who you are and where you're from, and it's a unique place. And I think people, it's like, the fish in the water, you don't see it when you're in it until you realize,
Yeah, I like that a lot, because everyone is someone from somewhere, right? When I first started in the entertainment industry, I literally had people say to me, "You're just a Mennonite from Steinbach. Like, do you think you're going to make something of yourself? You're just a Mennonite from Steinbach." But everyone is someone from somewhere. Everyone. And so I love that you're teaching your students that. So now we call this thing Mennonites Laughing, an evening of Schput and Schpos. So are you sputting, and are you mocking Mennonites in your writing? Okay, we'll start with Andrew on this one. Flip the script.
Yeah, of course you can start with.
Are you mocking us, Andrew?
Some people might say so. I never have that in my head, that I'm thinking that I'm mocking somebody. Like I say, some of them are literally autobiographical, and how there's kind of like in comedy or whatever, there's or satire specifically, but comedy in general, you can punch up with your humor, or you can punch down, which is like very bad. Or I kind of think of the Daily Bonnet as punching sideways or inward or something like that. It's self-deprecating humor. And so I would definitely I do not think of it as mocking. So I think of it as poking fun, and even when I'm making a serious point, it's still not mocking. It's like, hey, think about this issue or this topic or whatever. It isn't a mocking thing.
Yeah, I like that. How about Armin? They spot it, and are you mocking us? What are you doing, Armin?
I don't think so. I think that I'm celebrating a culture, a way of life, a time that is somewhat still with us, but in many ways isn't anymore. The sins have changed drastically since I was a child.
Did you see the new list of sins for 2022?
Oh, are they out yet?
Just came out, yeah.
Wow, that's early.
What list?
The new list of sins.
Oh, if you don't know the list, you're already on it.
Oh, okay, all right. So I think I'm celebrating something.
Mhm.
I'm not public relations either. I'm not, but I am celebrating all the characters, the stories, the time, so on, and there's a wide range of stories to tell, and they're coming out. More and more people are writing them. What at one time was sort of kept within Low German.
Yeah. Well, how do you start your books? Do you start with a story that you're familiar with? It's like someone you know in your life, or a story that you heard that might be true, and then turned it into fiction, or do you just make stuff up?
Well, you need something to make stuff up with. So, I make stuff up. None of the stories that I write are true in the sense of facts, but I write with. Just like a painter uses different colors of paint, I take advantage of the words and what's around me to make the story that I make, but how do I start? Well, each story is different. Sometimes it's with kind of an image. Sometimes it's with, oh, well, there's something that happened, or I remember this thing, and where does it go? My play, the Moonlight Sonata of Beethoven Blatz, and the novel Grandmother Laughing, the germ of it happened when I was conducting a writing workshop, and I set the participants writing, starting with I remember, and then I decided to write alongside them. And I remembered an anecdote told about my grandfather, who had gone berry picking and had answered the call of nature and reached for the wrong leaves, so to speak, and ended up with poison ivy so bad he had to wear a dress on the field for the harvest. So that was all I knew about the story.
Andrew's already trying to steal that for a daily bonnet. He's already I see him, his eyes just going darting like this.
And then I just started questioning, well, I wonder how my grandparents would have picked out the dress. So I wrote about that, just kind of, but when I sat down to write the story, a grandmother started talking, and it wasn't my grandmother. It was Sosh, who's in the book, but at the time I didn't even know her name. But it was a grandmother talking to her grandson, and it had nothing to do with my life. You know?
Oh, that is cool. I love that. Andrew, so for your Daily Bonnet book, you've written thousands of stories, but you had to whittle it down. And I'm not bitter, but none of my stories made it into the book. I'm just saying I'm not bitter.
I wrote one that he'd been elected into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Well,
People thought it was real. Like an Elvis Tribute Artist was in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
well, as a performer, on my website, I have my bio written out so people can introduce me with this information. Here's my bio. This is how you introduce me. And sometimes people do their own research. Do the research, people. And so they Google Corny Rempel and they find stories that they use in their introductions on stage. They're like, Corny Rempel is the first Elvis Tribute Artist to ever be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Had they read to the end of that story, it took place at Neufeld's garage, and the Dalai Lama and Snoop Dogg were there. And also that I was starting a new, because I do Elvis and I do Johnny Cash, and that I was going to be also the first Menno Simons impersonator, which was also and he started a new venture. He's going to be Menno Simons, ladies and gentlemen. Corny Rempel. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
But okay, how do you choose? And I understand people out there don't know who Corny Rempel is, other than right here. So how do you choose what stories go in the book?
First, well, okay. No, I won't say that. Yeah, I mean, it was a process of like kind of looking at obviously like, popular, well-liked articles, but also ones that I really like, because sometimes like kind of talking about the headline. Sometimes there's articles where the headline is so good that people don't read the articles, or not as many people do, because the headline is just so funny by itself or whatever. And so some of them I was like, oh, wait a minute, this article, like, appreciate the article that's going in the book,
Yeah.
So there's some, just sort of personal favorites. And there's even a few new ones actually that have never been seen the light of day yet, so until the book. And yeah, so basically fan favorites, my own favorites. And then also like some articles you're writing about something that's very timely, that takes, it's referring to something in the news or whatever. And obviously 6 months from now or a year or whatever, so I look at some articles sometimes from a year or two ago and I was like, what is this even referring to? Oh, okay, there was something in the news that week that everyone was talking about, but it's amazing how we forget these things so quickly. The news cycle changes so quickly. So yeah. Obviously stuff like that I would not include either, but yeah.
So you write a lot of satire, but you also wrote a novel. The difference and what's easier?
Well, the articles are easier in the sense that they don't really take so long to write, and a novel that's like a arduous?
It's like getting married.
It's a commitment.
Yeah.
For me, just reading a book is a commitment.
Well, that's why the Daily Bonnet book is just like short little
Short
stories.
little stories. Yeah, little bathroom reader.
Yeah, you can
Nice.
put it in the bathroom, yeah. So I mean, it's a very different process.
Mhm.
A novel in a sense is probably like significantly more work because you have to look at on page 20, and you probably know this, like on page 20, I said that this person drove a truck, and it's not mentioned again. And then on page 202, I said they had a car. And so it's not just like editing details you have to catch, it's like consistency things. And you could just like go bonkers trying to like catch all of those sorts of things. So with articles, it's not nearly as difficult in that way. But it was a lot of work to put it all, even though the articles were already written, it still was a lot of work to put it all together and edited. They've been changed and improved and updated. So it was a lot of work too.
Okay. Armin, an interesting or unexpected audience reaction to your writing? Has anybody ever come up to you and just hit you with something that made you go, I did not see that?
Got you to sign one of Rudy Weep's books. That's upcoming here soon in a few minutes.
Well,
Kind of like this unexpected question I just asked you.
yes. I mean, a number of people have confided that they like to read The Salvation of Yash Siemens in bed.
Oh,
And
do tell.
and so anyway,
So anyway,
funny things.
or maybe somebody like saw
You mean like
themselves
Metaslope? During Metaslope?
during Matterschloss,
No, before.
before
the
Matterschloss.
lights out.
Before
Before
Metaslope.
the lights out, I believe. They didn't specify.
Hmm.
A friend of mine said that his wife was 10 days overdue and they started reading my novel and that
She went into labor.
she went into labor.
Yeah. Yeah, there's chemical induction and humor induction, right? Yeah. All right.
Well, I mean, the other thing was when I met Jake Letkeman in the airport about 6 months after the book had come out, and he told me how much he liked the chapter 8 that got the books, got it pulled from the bookstore in Altona back then. And, so
We're gonna have
so
another
there was
reading
a-
of
so-
chapter 8.
Yeah, and other ministers have told me how much they appreciated that chapter.
Okay.
And so that was something I wasn't expecting.
What about you, Andrew?
Yeah, I've had a few interesting emails. I don't know if this person is here, but if you are,
We'll find out in a minute.
But someone emailed me fairly recently saying, after the book came out, actually saying that during remote learning, that their child, and they told me actually that I could say this story publicly, that their child was getting up really early. It was, I think a 9-year-old child was getting up really early and was supposed to be reading like Greek myths or something, and had been covertly reading The Best of the Bonnet, and then he had apparently read the whole thing, like 9-10-year-old read the whole thing through twice, and she thought this was very funny, and she hadn't read it yet, but she said, like, I'm pretty sure there's not a lot of swearing, but I'm pretty sure there's also a heck of a lot of innuendo, and I'm like, yep, there is.
A lot of Matterschloss going on.
Like, I don't know what that kid is gonna think of, like the children walking in on parents having Metaslope article, but learn some things. There's literally an article, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Also, you'll be happy to know that, well, if you're in here, you obviously showed your vaccine card. That means you were in COVID-19 impfed, right? Did you guys get the impfed sticker? Did you get the impfed sticker? Okay, so they had the, I got vaccinated, and then they had it in Low German. That was Andrew's idea. Yeah, Andrew came up with that idea. I thought that was awesome. Yeah, well done, well done. Okay, that's all the questions that I have. And I know that the audience has some questions, but before we do that, I've been told that I look strikingly like Elvis. So I've been asked, can you sing an Elvis song? Will you guys be okay with that if I sing an Elvis song? And then we'll get to your question. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Are you ready? Let's do it. Which one for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready now. Go can go, but don't you step on my blue suede shoe. Or you can do anything for the hope of my blue suede shoe. Where you can knock me down, step on my face, slander my name all over the place, or do anything that you want to do. But oh, honey, lay off of my shoes, and don't you step on my blue suede shoe. Or you can do anything but lay off of my blue suede shoe. All right, who here speaks Low German? Blood teach, where all the blood teacher knocks out eating, smoke pot, drinking. Okay. This is for you. I'm going to switch into Plautdeutsch now. All right, here we go. Till me doll, stoppen min gesagt, en sei mi dumm, eben ganze Steinbach, der Orientspot, whatever du weißt, but oh, honey, ich denk, min bleibe schon, stopp nicht, ab min bleibe lade schon. Because it's hard down a hole, but they can be bleibe lade schon. Go everybody. You know what we call this in Steinbach? We call this Mennonite dancing. Ein für die Elf, 2 für die Show, 3 zum Red Milchhorn, Goldkorn to go and stop me. I mean, blab a lot of show. Because earns are done open, they can be blab a lot of show. Sing it with me now, come on everybody. Adults, blab, blab, blab a lot of show, baby. It's blue, blue, blue suede shoes. Blab, blab, blab a lot of show, baby. It's blue, blue, blue suede shoes. You can do anything but lay off of my blab a lot of show. Thank you very much.
Now we're doing 606, right?
Yeah, if you can turn in your hymnals. 336. Yeah. Anyway, there it is. Elvis with a beard. All right, and gray hair. That's what Elvis's dad would sound like. Anyway. Questions from the audience. Are we ready with the microphone?
We are ready with the microphone.
All right. Where are you? Okay. Are we ready with the John? Oh, here we go. Here comes John. All right. Who has questions? Raise your hand and he'll come over and
then I will just ask you to tell me the question and then I will intone it into the microphone.
Since we both grew up in Hauptstadt, we know that Josh Stevens was set in Hauptstadt with the tower and all that. Many of my cousins from Hauptstadt claim that they know all the characters that you wrote about. Were they actual characters from Hauptstadt or are they completely made up?
Well, I don't know. I would suggest that you organize a symposium under the TV tower and you can hash that out and see what's what. The only real name I used in the novel was Henry the Bull. That was a real person, and apparently he thought that was great.
now with the masks on, we're going to shift gears because that's a long question to, now for him to repeat. So he is going to hold the mic up to you and don't touch it.
And I will point out that if any of the current 110 people watching on YouTube have any questions, you are also welcome to chime in.
Right on. All right, any more questions?
So Armin, what did you mean by that marriage comment?
Is that your wife?
That is my wife. My second one.
After this?
What did I mean? Well, it's a long haul, and every once in a while you get the urge to have an affair and write a poem.
Great question. Anybody else? Did we have any online questions?
We don't, they're very quiet.
Very quiet. You know, this reminds me of when it's 12:05 and Chicken Chef is starting to get busy and people are like, come on, wrap it up. You know, on Sunday morning at 12:05. Anyway, anybody else? I got a question. Has there ever been, and this might be more for Andrew, but Armin, maybe you as well. Has there ever been a topic that you thought of and you go, oh, I'm writing about this, and then you went, they can't handle this. Has there been some topics that you've gone, I'm not touching that?
Well, yeah, lots, but one that I could say. No, I had for a while. I was keeping a list of like unused like headlines that I thought were good, but I wasn't going to use them. But I think there's one where there's a time when Steinbach city the city hall was Steinbach is a city. Did you know that the city hall was expanding, and my headline was going to be Steinbach City Hall still not big enough to accommodate councillors' egos.
Oh.
I didn't publish that.
Great heading. How about you, Armin? Has there ever been something that you went, I can't write that?
I usually write it first and then either not go with it or my editor tells me I can't.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Am I going to sing Johnny Cash was the next question. Oh, not tonight, but another night. Yes, in the back, we have a question.
Coincidentally, that question was also repeated online.
Oh, it was? Oh, boy.
Do you write several articles kind of in one chunk, or is it just publishing them as you write them?
Yeah, so sometimes like I think I set a record there like a couple of weeks ago when I wrote 12 in one day, and I just published one a day, but that would be abnormal. Usually it's like on average it would be kind of like I'm writing one a day and it doesn't necessarily get published the next day, and I have I had like 2 months sitting there ready to go so that I never have the pressure that, oh, I have to write something and I have to publish it tomorrow kind of thing. But yeah, I try to write one every day and sort of keep that 2 months buffer, sitting there. But there's also some days when I don't write any. But on average, it would be kind of like a one a day kind of thing. And they usually don't really take all that long to do. So it's kind of just a daily routine, but there have been some exceptions to that.
We do have 2 questions that have come in online, which might bring us to the end of the evening if you folks are so inclined. Kim asks, Andrew and Armin, what do you read that inspires your own writing?
I read
The Daily
all
Bonnet.
kinds of things. I read the Daily Bonnet too, but I read everything from Miriam Taves to articles and all kinds of magazines and political stuff and so on. I haven't been writing politically since the second coming of Schpos, which I wish more people would read. It seems to, whenever I look at it, I say, hey, this still applies today. But anyway, I've been writing mostly plays the last few years, but I find I get inspiration from novels for my plays, which is maybe not the greatest thing, but I just bought a book today that I heard about on the CBC few days ago called The Shadow King about Algeria or Ethiopia and during wartime. And just some of the things that the author said and about it made me really want to know about and want to read this. So yeah, read everything. You have to read a lot of things, everything. Don't limit yourself to just one kind of writing.
I read The Salvation of Josh Siemens and Martyr's Mirror. That's it. No, I mean, I read pretty widely. I read actually quite a lot of nonfiction, and if you've read Once Removed, you can probably tell I have an interest in history. So I read, history, and Armin's work, and a lot of. Lately, I have read a lot of Mennonite writers in the past couple of years. But I read for a while there. I was trying to read every Nobel Prize winner in literature. I was trying to read everything on the list, and some of it's not even in print. It's some of the early ones, but you get exposed to some writers from all around the world in translation. Well, when you look at a list like that, that's not the only place you could find that. But yeah. So.
Oh, your mom just texted me. She said you didn't say the Bible.
Oh, well, yeah. That's it.
And our last question is a question specifically for Andrew, but we can extend it to Armin as well. So someone wanted to know, Andrew, is life better anonymous or in the spotlight? Which I will extend to include Armin. Armin, do you take greater pleasure from the writing or the sharing of your work, or where do you find the most pleasure?
Well, I'm guessing that this person might be referring to the fact that I used a pen name at first. I used it wasn't really such a stretch, but I used Bergman as the last name, which is my mom's last name. It was partly because I'm sort of a private person, and then also sort of a tribute to my grandfather, who was an amateur poet. So it was kind of that. But then I realized it was a hassle to do that. I don't know how writers that use pen names do it, because someone wrote me a check, Andrew Bergman, and I couldn't cash it. No Mennonite's gonna turn down a check. It was $11 or something. But yeah, no, I'm sort of just used to that by now. Honestly, nobody in Steinbach, people do recognize me, but people don't really. In Steinbach, people just people are more likely to come up and say something to me in Winnipeg or some other place than in Steinbach. It's, I don't know if you know, it's just a thing about Steinbachers. They just sort of let you be, which is good.
Well, I kind of like being so famous that nobody's ever heard of me.
So famous that your picture's above the bathroom here.
Yeah.
Well, that's where I get all the dirt.
Yeah. Oh, they all my vie. That's great. Any more questions? Last chance. And all the ones online are done?
They are, but we have one more from the first.
Here we go.
Years ago, I was for a few months the executive director of Camp Harness. And I was at somebody's house, and they opened up a cabinet and it was full of liquor. And I said, I thought Mennonites didn't drink. She says, we all drink, but we don't talk about it.
Yeah. And that's been the topic of a lot of your stories too.
We voted on that Steinbach, whether to acknowledge each other in the liquor store.
Yeah, yeah.
Big referendum. You might have seen, they wrote about it in the 3 books.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, if they see you there, you also saw them there. So
it's actually not.
Wait a minute. Oh, it's great.
The masses coming in.
Yep. Yeah, they do. Excellent. Well, we are, unless there's one last minute question that's burning in your heart, we are going to move on to the book signing. Oh, his heartburn. He's got heartburn.
When you said burning in your heart, that's when I got moved. But in any case, I'm with Winnipeg Mennonite Theatre, and we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year.
Wonderful.
And when we celebrated our 40th, Armin, we had a playwriting competition, and Armin won first prize, and we've for Wine and Little Breads, I think that's what it was called, and of course we produced it. And there's a deadline, June the 30th, and I challenge all of you to write a play for us, because there's another playwriting competition this year. So you're welcome to do that, and everybody else as well. So the question for you, because it's supposed to be a question.
Did you have fun?
You're not gonna try to pitch an MLM now, are you?
Have you written your play yet?
You got one in the chamber?
I've thought about it. I've never written a play, but I've thought about it. Maybe someday.
Well, I did expand Wine and Little Breads into a full-length play. But because of COVID, it hasn't been produced yet.
We need another one-act play.
There you go. The challenge is out. Another one-act play. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. And thank you to McNally Robinson for hosting us here tonight. This is wonderful. Thank you so much. And book signing, they're going to be set up just outside, and they'd love to meet you. So thank you very much. Let's hear it again for our wonderful authors.
Thank you so much for coming.
And thank you so very much, Corny, for hosting as well. I just have a few very quick procedural notes before we get moving. If we could ask you just to remain seated before we bring our authors to the table, just so they don't get lost in the chaos, that would be wonderful. Thank you so very much. I just wanted to extend my gratitude once again to the Winnipeg International Writers Festival, to Turnstone Press for helping to put this on, to Armin Wiebe and for all his tolerance of his malfunctioning microphone. And of course to Andrew Unger, which I should point out, Andrew launched his book Once Removed in the height of the pandemic. And then this is the first time we've actually had him physically behind a microphone here at the store. So we're so delighted to be occupying the same physical space as you right now.
Thanks for having me.
And I would also like to point out that you can get a copy of any of Armin or Andrew's books signed. We do have some at the table just out there. There's some on the display at the front. Please feel free to get them signed before you pay for them. Please do pay for the books before you leave the store. And before I go, I would be remiss if I didn't ask all of you to join me one final time in acknowledging your host for the evening, Corny Rempel. Thank you all so much for coming.